You have questions and I have answers. Hi friends, it's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me. And I have been receiving an abundance of questions on my YouTube channel, on my podcast, through my email, and live and in person. So I thought that today might be a day for me to answer some of the most common questions and give a little bit of information along the way so that everyone can have the answer. Because I think that if one person's asking the question, or maybe even two, then there's more people that have the question. Now, what I also know about those of us who are gifted and neurodivergent is sometimes we have questions that we don't even know we have. And when someone else asks it, we're like, oh, that's a good one. I want to hear the answer to that. So I thought that this would be a fun episode to go over some of the questions that I've been getting and give you my take on them. And again, this is just Dianne's take from all of my, 4 decades of experience and all my education. But I think that maybe there will be value for you. We'll see what happens. So the first question is one of my favorites, actually. What do I need in order to survive the system that is meant for the 99%? So I have a young, gifted person with ADHD I'm working with who's in college. And this person wants to know, how do you do it when you're profoundly gifted and you have ADHD? And even when you're going to a very prestigious school, that there's not a lot of gifted people around or a lot of people that understand him. How do we do that? And how do we then go out into the world that has all these systems made for average, and where we as gifted individuals don't necessarily fit in? And if you have a twice exceptionality or a divergence of some kind, you really don't fit in. And so he wanted to know, how do you prepare yourself for going out into the world, into the workforce, into the world in general, and be able to fit in some way? And so I had several answers to that. One is, we're not meant to fit in the traditional sense of fitting in. We, as neurodivergent gifted people, are made to be different so that we can bring our gifts and our light and our authenticity to the world. See, the world needs people like us in order to help things keep moving forward. We're not meant to be status quo. We're not meant to be average. So the first thing is to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for the others. Because realize that a lot of people out there don't even know that gifted is a thing. I know gifted people who don't know gifted is a thing. I know gifted people who have ADHD who don't realize that neurodivergence and twice exceptionality is a thing. So some people are walking around trying to fit in situations where they're really designed to bring something new and fresh and exciting to the experience of life. And so the first step is to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for the other people, because we don't know what we don't know. And a lot of people just don't know. The second thing is to learn how to step back and breathe. And I always put my hand over my high heart and say, well, how does this feel to me? And to realize that 100% of us may not mesh really well with people who are not on the same wavelength. So what we do is we allow ourselves to use their pace and we follow their lead. So if somebody's moving a little slower, we practice breathing and moving slower. If somebody is using a different language set, we practice backing up a minute and using their language set. It helps with rapport, but it also helps us not be misunderstood, and it helps them not feel so misunderstood. Because the whole idea of any kind of human connection and relationship is to feel connected, is to have rapport, is to be engaged. That's the reason we're mammals. We're meant to do that. And so sometimes it's really easy to get cattywampus and expect people to run over to our side of the bridge, so to speak, when maybe they're not able or don't want to. And so I think it behooves us as neurodivergent people and as gifted people to say, how can I be part of the solution? How can I be part of building a bridge so that the word gifted doesn't scare people away? So that understanding that just because I might have a high intelligence, or I might be inquisitive, or I might be really creative, doesn't mean that I think I'm better than you. In fact, it's harder. So what I suggest to this young man and to other people who are wondering how to handle the world, one is I cover it in my book, Someone Gets Me, how intensely sensitive people can make it in an insensitive world. It's in that book. There's lots of ideas, but there's also practicality here, is have enough gifted people in your world and people that fulfill those intellectual and creative needs, so that when you are out in the world doing worldly things, that you're not yearning to be understood and connected as much. You're not feeling that void because it's filled up. So you can give from your overflow in those situations. That's a Cliff Note version. If you wanted to know more, discuss it more, make a get to know you call, I'm happy to talk about it more. The next question that came through is, what is the biggest obstacle that neurodivergent and gifted people face? And specifically the person was asking about, when people call me to work with me, what's like the number one obstacle? Well, often people come to me because they're stuck, and they're stuck because of maybe feeling depressed or anxious or lonely. Those are the first things they say. But as I go through the 12 major life areas and really start looking at their satisfaction level and things, one of the key threads that goes through a large majority of the people that I work with initially is judgment. And judgment is different than discernment. Judgment means I'm assigning value. And if I'm assigning value, then I'm judging. And that doesn't mean it's always wrong. Okay. I'm just saying that's what it means. Discernment means I look at something, a person, a situation, or whatever, and go, well, works for me, maybe doesn't work for me. That's okay. Whatever. Totally different. So judgment is a big situation because people will judge themselves. Why am I like this? Why am I so stupid? How come I can't concentrate? How come people say I'm so smart, but I can't figure out this very simple little thing? All of that judgment and frustration is often underlying the depression and anxiety and stuckness, because the person's judging themselves. Or, and this is very common, people are judging others outside of themselves. They're judging them as stupid. They're judging them as not being smart enough. They're judging them as not knowing what they're doing. Whether they are or not stupid or not knowing what they're doing, or whether that's true or not, when you judge another person, you're inviting more judgment back to you. That's the first thing. And second thing is you're stopping yourself from growing. You're stopping yourself from your own life satisfaction. You're burning your beautiful essence and just throwing it away, because judgment is assigning value. And unless you're here to assign value, unless you're a judge on a panel, then you want to get out of that business. So again, we come back to having compassion for others. Maybe somebody you run into or somebody you work with isn't as smart as you. Maybe they're not profoundly gifted. Okay. They still have value, and they still have meaning, and they still have desires in their life. They're just like you in that way. Their brain is different. Their nervous system is different, just like yours is different than theirs. But judging them doesn't serve you or them. So judgment is a really big hurdle that a lot of the gifted people that work with me start out having to really look at with themselves as, wow, I'm walking around judging everybody. And so what happens when we judge people in a harsh way over and over and over again, we get irritated and angry and frustrated. And then pretty soon we look like unapproachable people, and we become approachable, and then we don't like living in our own skin eventually. And that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve anybody at all. Because I believe that those of us who are neurodivergent and gifted, that we're the ones here to help bring something good and amazing to humanity. Well, we can't do it if we're wasting all of our vital life force judging someone else for whether they can ring up our groceries fast enough, or whether they can answer a question in a sales meeting fast enough, or whether they know how to do something in the way that we think it should be done. So gifted people often have to work through judgment. Now, judgment comes from fear. So when somebody's judging, I'm kind of always thinking, okay, what's that person afraid of? Now, it may not be the emotion of fear. It could be existential fear. And fear's function is to get ready. So what is the person needing to get ready for that they're on some level either not paying attention to or resisting? Because I don't think anybody sets out to be harming another person. I think that kind of stuff happens, or that judgment that really harms ourselves comes because we don't understand, or we don't have a place. Like that first question, what's the place? How do I do it? Well, the first thing we do is we have compassion. And the second thing we do is we realize that person has value just like you do. And if you're judging them as not having value, I would like to say, ask yourself, what is your sense of your own value and worth? Because there's an old phrase out there, you spot it, you got it. Well, you spot it, you got it for the great, creative, wonderful things, but you also spot it, you got it when stuff feels kind of icky. And so if I'm judging you, then I need to say, how am I judging myself? And I'm putting it off on you, right? How am I keeping myself separated by assigning value to things that maybe doesn't really matter? So it really takes some work on ourselves and some compassion. It takes some focus. I do a lot of work with that with my people because I started out judging too way back many years ago. And I still can fall in that trap. I recently had an experience where I started going down that road. And what I said was, wait a second, whoa, 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 wait, Missy. He pointed the finger at myself. What are you doing? And I looked and I said, oh my gosh, look, I'm judging myself. And the moment I offered myself some compassion and some self-love in that arena, I could see the situation much differently. Now, that doesn't mean I have to engage in it, or that doesn't mean I have to make myself small. It doesn't mean anything other than when I release the judgment, I can make better decisions. When I release judgment, I can be the person I'm meant to be. When I release judgment, I don't look back and wish I had done something differently. So you want to really work on the judgment. That's the number one thing that is underlying a lot of the issues that people come and start working with me on. And then we can get, once we get through some of the judging things, we can get through, okay, what's going on underneath it? Is it fear of losing what I have or not getting what I want? Is it shame, thinking there's something seriously wrong with me? Because a lot of gifted people grow up thinking something's wrong with them. I did. I thought something was wrong with me. Yet I remember asking for a long time, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? People would say, nothing is wrong with you. Well, that didn't help me any. I didn't understand when I was younger. And so even I have adults I work with who, when I tell them, here's the issue here, you're having trouble at work because your brain is different, your process is different. You're gifted. You have overexcitabilities, or you maybe have ADHD or something. Or maybe you have bipolar disorder because that's positively correlated with being smart. What if you have things happening that nobody helped you put together in a real effective way to move yourself forward in your life? Just what if, right? So I really would like to encourage everybody to understand that judgment's a really good place to start your work, because whatever we're judging about someone else has a little seed in us somewhere, and we can work on that so that we can start to free ourselves from a trance of a bunch of self-induced lies, I call it, right? Because we tell ourselves stories that just aren't true about ourselves and others. So that's one of the biggest things. The next biggest thing is the self-judgment about what's wrong with me. That there's something wrong with me. I'll never get it. I'll never figure it out. No, I'll never measure up. I'll never be like the masses. And the truth is, you're not going to be like the masses. You weren't designed to be like the masses. You are not the masses. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm certain you're not the masses, even if you think you are. So it's okay to not be part of the masses. It's okay to be a little different. It's okay to be an outlier. In fact, sometimes that's the more effective place to be. So a more effective question for yourself is, what cool thing about me do I get to bring to the table? Do I get to bring to my life and the lives of those around me, whether it's a family or work or friends? What do I get to bring? And bring that. You'll be fulfilled, and the other people will be just so happy. Okay, so the next question is, in your book, Someone Gets Me, you talk about intense sensitivities. Elaborate on that. Okay. That's kind of straightforward. So in my latest book, Someone Gets Me, which is the name of this podcast, right, is all about intense sensitivities. That's what I coined that phrase, because what I noticed is there's a blend of lots of different pieces that sometimes people try to silo and compartmentalize. And I really think if we blend them, we'll be more effective. So the intensities are also the overexcitabilities, as brought forward by Dabrowski and talked about commonly in the gifted world. And so we have overexcitabilities to different extents and different combinations. If you don't know about overexcitabilities and you want to know more about them, you can feel free to give me a call or just look up Dabrowski and overexcitabilities. It's everywhere. It's also in the book, Someone Gets Me. I'll have a link in the show notes. There's a lot of information about those, and I don't want to go down that tangent because I'll go down there forever. But here's the other part of it. A lot of people who have intense sensitivities, also the intensities or the overexcitabilities, the sensitivity is a spiritual sensitivity, really high intuition. Now, intuition is the greatest form or the highest form of intelligence, like even Forbes magazine says that. So intuition is a form of intelligence, yet a lot of people think it's woo-woo. And what I notice is a lot of gifted people, a lot of twice exceptional people, often have really strong intuition, but they don't talk about it, or they don't realize that they're using that along with their intensities, that sensitivity with their intensities, in order to create something amazing. I was running a 3-day retreat one time for a bunch of neuroscientist research geeks, right? Like they're researchers. And spontaneously in the middle of my presentation, I said, who here uses your intuition in your research? Every single hand went up. They sprung up. And then they all looked around and laughed, because what they realized was they were all using their intuition and they knew it, but they didn't dare say it in an academic setting, not even to their friends, not even to the people in the same lab, but yet they were. So these people are intensely sensitive. They have their overexcitabilities, and they also have the sensitivity of high intuition or high empathy. And so that combination is often overlooked in the gifted community, in the gifted language, in the gifted world, because it's all more about academics often. People are starting to talk about it more, the spiritual part. But it's so important to realize that if you have a lot of intuition, or if you're somebody that's very empathic, or you tend to just know things on a deeper soul level, that you have a unique gift that goes with, kind of interlaces with your overexcitabilities and your giftedness, which adds another layer of beauty and goodness and light to you. And it also adds another layer of how do I manage the world? Because sometimes we feel deeply. We can feel things before they happen. Sometimes we can step outside of our house and we can just feel the energy of what's going on in the world. And we are affected by it because we're very sensitive. So how do we handle that? How do we handle when we go into a room and we notice all the feelings and all the things, because we're intuitive, but we're also very sensitive? And how do we do that? And so sometimes the navigating this often in sensitive worlds a little trickier. And sometimes there's things we have to do in order to be our most authentic sovereign self, because we're able then to say, okay, well, this is what's going on. So that's really, really important. So that's a little bit of an elaboration. If you have more questions about intense sensitivities, I suggest you read the book, Someone Gets Me, or make a discovery call with me. I'm happy to talk about it more. But since I'm answering lots of questions and I have a few more to go, I don't want to belabor points beyond what seems to fit. And so another person wrote, I'm an adult, 45 years old, and never thought about being gifted or called myself even gifted, but I resonate with your books and I resonate with your podcast. And so is it possible that I could be gifted and not know it? Yes, you can be gifted and not know it. You can look at your life and you can engage with other gifted people. And when you feel that resonance and you're more like them than not like them, then most likely I would say, yes, you're gifted. What I know is a lot of adults who maybe aren't even targeted as being gifted growing up for whatever reason, or were targeted as gifted growing up in elementary and junior high school, they get out of college or out of high school and they think, well, I'm not gifted anymore, which that's not true. We stay gifted our whole lives. And so sometimes people just never had that word, or they don't have the language, or maybe it was introduced to them and then they didn't have like a very good feeling because they didn't know what it meant. And so they ran away, and now they're realizing, well, wait a minute, there is something different about me. So what I want to say to everybody is that if you're resonating with something and it feels like there's more to it than you already know, start researching, talk to people about it. That's why I do discovery calls. I talk to people all the time because they're asking me questions like this. How do you know? Or does it matter if I get diagnosed or not? There's pros and cons depending on who you are to all of these things. And to know that being gifted is not a pathology. It's also not a license to act like you're better than someone else. A lot of people say, well, you're gifted, you think you're better than everyone. That's not true. It's harder to be gifted. So if you're one of those people who's resonating with content created for gifted neurodivergent people, and you look at your life and go, man, I've struggled in relationships and I've had some difficulty at work, and I've had to like overcompensate and overdo some things in order to function, then you can find solace in the fact that, yes, maybe you are, and maybe that would answer some questions that you have. And maybe you could connect with us, all of us in this world, so that you can make the rest of your life flow a lot better and work a lot better for you. So if you think you might be gifted, then reach out to any one of us. If you're wondering if you are, but our content resonates with you, then you probably are. And then the bigger question is, do you need a diagnosis, or you just need to like resonate with people who resonate with you? Depends on what you need, depends on what you want. There's no wrong answer. The best way to look at it is what's working for me. I have some people who go and get a diagnosis because they want the diagnosis because that makes it real. I have other people who say, yeah, I don't need a diagnosis. I know it's real because I can check off all the boxes. And that's good enough for them. And because they don't need it, an exceptionality, or they don't need the diagnosis for a reason, then that curiosity is settled and they're good. So there's so many different factors, and I want to encourage you to investigate to the point of your own satisfaction. Interview people, listen to things, read articles, read books, listen to podcasts, do whatever it takes so that you can feel calm in your soul, so you can feel grounded in who you are. That's so important. Yeah, that's the way I see it. So again, if you want to talk about it more, please just reach out to me. I'm happy to do it. And then the last question that I have here that I wrote down out of all of these was, I'm gifted and have been diagnosed when I was young with ADHD, and now I'm in college and I'm trying to sort out how to be creative and deal with my ADHD without being distracted. Oh, that's a good one. So one thing to do is to have compassion for yourself. Another thing to do is have a schedule for yourself that gives you permission to be doing your college work, doing your creative work, and then doing other things so that you have a rhythm to what you're doing. And understand that ADHD does not mean that you can't concentrate. It means that sometimes you can be time blind and concentrate too much, which makes it look like you're not concentrating, right? And gifted people have transition issues anyway. So if we have to go from something we love to do, like creating music or creating art or creating, and to something we don't want to do, like paperwork or homework that doesn't turn us on, right? Then that transition is going to be a little tricky for a gifted person to start with. So you learn how to work with your own constellation of things, and then how do we work on it? So one of the things I do with my people is figure out what all the constellation of things are they want to do, and then we come up with a system that usually has some kind of geometric shape that works for the person, with how are we going to keep a flow going that's reasonable, knowing that we're going to mess it up, and knowing we're going to excel, and knowing there's going to be days that are just average. And so gifted people, when they mess stuff up, tend to be really hard on themselves, to which I say, you're going to mess it up. Okay. You also can clean it up, right? So there's lots of different ways to do that. But I think beating ourselves up for being distracted works against us. I think it's very important that when we have more than one thing going on, that we learn to have a blended way of looking at it, blended conversation, a way to say, okay, how do I feel? The somatic part, right? What am I thinking? What's going on? What's important? What are the priorities really? And then find a way to put them in a flow, in a system that works. I use color-coded calendars and little post-it notes, and then post-it note right here too. I have all these things to remind me and to keep me going in the right direction, because otherwise I'll do something else. Or I'll get so time blind on one thing, I'll go, oh my gosh, half the day went by. So we have little reminders that are friendly to us. And so it's important that you work on what works for you. What works for me may not work for you. I've had people laugh at me with my post-it notes, and I've had other people go, are you kidding me? I have a whole wall of them. So it's not about whether post-it notes are good or bad. It's about what works for you. And so when I'm working with people, that's what we do, is we focus on what's going to work for that individual, because no two people are the same. And especially if somebody's gifted and they have other things going on, they're really not the same. We're not going to fit into the typical categories of the things we see out there in the world. We might have to make up our own planner. We might have to not use one at all. I don't know. Depends on who you are and what your goals are. So I hope answering some of these questions has reminded you of your greatness, your beauty, your essence, and who you really are. Because what I believe with everything in my being, with every cell of my being, is that you, that gifted, neurodivergent, quirky, cool person, that you're here to make a difference in this world that is so profound you can't even see it yet. I know that all of us together are here to bring something amazing to humanity and to planet Earth. And so, yeah, it sounds like a tall order. It sounds all stressful, but really it's not, because it's us bringing our beauty forward. That's all it takes. It takes us being who we are in a way that is meaningful. And so that's what I want all of my people that I work with to do. That's what I would like for you to do for yourself. And I would really hope and pray that good things keep happening for you. Now, one last question that I want to cover, and that is, do you have any upcoming events? Because I do a lot of retreats for gifted people and workshops and things like that. And I haven't done any in quite a while. And so I've decided that what I'm going to start doing in, I don't know, about 4 or 5 weeks, so sometime in end of February 2025, we're going to start doing a Someone Gets Me group. And it's not going to be a therapy group. It is going to be a connection and learning with a little bit of teaching and a little bit, and mostly connecting with other people who are gifted, who understand some of the paradigms and some of the work that I'm doing, because I have a MEPS model of life, and I do the life satisfaction survey, and there's certain things that I teach people how to live their lives in a way that works for them for being satisfied. So it will be published on my Someone Gets Me Facebook group, and I will send emails to all of my people. So if you want to be on my email list, then let me know, so that you can join it in. There's not going to be any cost to it. It's mostly going to be to help people connect and get together. And then if the people who show up to the first one want to do more, we'll do more. And if nobody wants to do more, then we won't do more. I'm going to let you, the audience, tell me what you would like, because I'm here to serve you. And because I'm here to serve you, I'm going to put it out there. If you want it, I will deliver it. If you don't want it, or it's not the right time, that's totally cool too. Whatever works. So I want to thank you for listening to Someone Gets Me today. Always know you can contact me for any kind of questions or more conversation, because that is what I'm here to do. So in the meantime, remember to keep your face to that sun, because the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine and be the cool, gifted, neurodivergent, amazing human being that you are. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.